You see a lot of this in government. That's another place where sociopaths gravitate. Congress. It's all power. It's all authority. You know, people think politics is all about being a public servant. Are you like on crack?
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with service. If you want to be a public servant, join the military. But
Yes.
if you want power and authority, become a politician.
Yeah, you know, one of my favorite people, I studied Joseph Campbell. He talks about no matter where you are in the political spectrum, it's always about aggression. It's either my way or the highway. There's no compromise. Like you're going to do it this way. That's it.
Right. And why does somebody enter politics at all? Oh, I want to make the world a better place. No, you want to control the policy.
Yes.
You want to drive the car this way because you see it going that way and you disagree with it. And if you get in, you can get the wheel. And that's what it's about. It has nothing to do with serving people.
Mm-hmm.
It has everything to do.
It's virtue signaling too, because if you want to just serve people, just shut your mouth and go do stuff.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to make a proclamation on fucking Facebook. It's like, yo, I'm doing this. Shut the fuck up, man. Go do something. Like shit.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. The biggest acts of kindness I've ever done, nobody knows about. Like I don't, do that. I mean, I'll be driving in my car and taking pictures of stuff and putting it on Facebook and all that. But then you got people like they're doing all these service acts and they're videoing the whole thing, like videoing giving food to the homeless. Like, what is that? But there's so many things there. We could talk a whole podcast about it. But anyway, the whole political thing, it's power and authority and control. And that's all that is about. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking charge, being in control, taking control of situations. We're glad when things go awry that there's somebody there who takes control and gains control. Or the plane goes down. There's 100 people in the plane. 60 survive. And somebody stands up and said, all right, we got to get a fire going. Quit your crying. Well, we're happy. Someone's got some direction. They're making me do something. Yes. Right? Else we're all going to waller in our self-pity, and these people are going to do this, these people are going to do that. That's why I like some of these reality shows, like Breaking Bad or Lost or any of these things. I fucking love Breaking Bad. You see these behavioral personality types assume their roles, right, throughout the process. And what's great about Breaking Bad is you've got Walter White, who is a engineering type chemist thinker, and through the 8 seasons, he turns into a sociopath.
Yeah.
For me, it's like fantastic. And of course, Jesse, he's the influencer. He's the one with all the friends. So he implores him to get out and build a base, right? And he can't keep his stupid mouth shut because he doesn't think he feels. The whole thing is fantastic. So if you understand what's happening in the brain, you can start predicting, what'll happen.
But where do we go in the future as humans? With, like, for example, on the subject of politics, for me, I don't like labels, but for me, I'm a firm believer in limited government, sovereign identity, sovereign individual rights over this whole group collective. And so we have, you have a bell curve, and obviously on, like, you have the far left, you have the far right, libertarian, socialism. And they can be screaming facts on both sides, X, Y, and Z, but no one's actually listening at all because all they care about is their perspective.
Right.
And so, like, for me, I'm more on the libertarian leaning side, and I don't want to be stuck in an echo chamber myself. Our family comes from former Yugoslavia. We lived through a socialist system, very ugly system, former Russia, ugly system, former China, ugly system. We've seen it firsthand. It's not like theory. We've lived through the process of what socialism creates. And so, like, I'm trying to figure out how do we destroy or how do we mitigate cognitive dissidence, or how do we start actually finding more of a common ground to communicate as opposed to like blah, 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 both sides just screaming at each other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a way to do it. I mean, if you've ever read The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. Yeah, Jonathan Haidt, The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Religion and Politics. Fantastic book, but he basically breaks that down in a real comprehensive way of how this is done. So there's 2 parts of your brain. When I say that, I'm saying that not as a neurologist who really knows the brain intricately, but because your brain is more like a cake. there's ingredients, but they're put together and you have the cake, but you don't open the cake up and go, there's the egg. It's in there, but it isn't, right? So although you have areas that do have certain functions, your brain works as a whole. Everything's integrated in so many levels. You can't compartmentalize it like that. But we do to make talk make sense. And that's what I'm doing. So there's a part of your brain that is what Haidt calls the rider of the elephant. And then there's a part of your brain that he calls the elephant. So there's the elephant and its rider. The elephant is the big elephant in the room. It's the biggest part. And that is your emotion, your visceral limbic orientations, heartbeat, lungs, white cell count. We're not sitting there going, trying to keep our heart beating. It happens, right? It's very ancient. It's in the lower tile part of our brain.
Sure.
And then the limbic system, all the emotional circuitry there. That has these feelings. So whatever you feel is that elephant, the rider's on top of the elephant and he's moving along with the elephant, and he's the reasonable part of your brain. So your reasonable mind goes with your feelings, right? And while this is taking place, rather than the reasonable part of your brain making the elephant stop, it can't because it's too big. So what the rider of the elephant does is justify why the elephant's going in this direction, rather than verify if it's the correct direction, right? So this is what happens with human beings. When you're trying to talk like you and I, let's say we have a difference of opinion. I could tell right now, if we were vehemently on opposing polar ends, you and I would both listen to each other.
Sure.
We would laugh. We could still go to have coffee afterwards, right?
Sure.
We're sensible people. Our IQ is at a certain place. Our emotional intelligence is at a certain level. There's a lot of factors that are playing into why we can do that. Most people can't. Okay, you've heard of the 80-20 rule?
Pareto,
well, use that for intelligence. Okay, and so there, the people that can do these things are the minority, not the majority. Okay. And hold this thought for a minute, because I just thought of something that's going to play right into this, what I'm telling you about able to have these conversations. Out of my profiles, there's about 36 different patterns you're going to get. The 47% of our country is only 2 of them.
Wow.
So, I mean, let that sink in. And they're passive, and they're not take charge. They're hope and doubt, or hope and imagine, but none of them are make. They don't make it happen. They either imagine things happening, hoping things happen, or doubt things will happen. And a combination of those 3. The Trump types make it happen, less than 4%. Okay, so it's a wonder that less than 20% of the population is in the voting block. Because more people that are more about making something happen or control something, it gets diminished, right? Most people are followers.
But this kind of scares me. Moving like populism scares me. Even like Plato used to tell you in Plato's Republic to talk about democracy is highly flawed. And I agree. Like I think direct democracy, some people hate me for saying this. I mean, it's a highly flawed system because it's so easy. You can easily manipulate and sway public opinion. Like look at Edward Bernays, nephew of Freud, like the godfather of modern day propaganda over here. And so it's like, what do we do as a society? And obviously cultural context matters.
Right.
That's very important. Like what do we do to kind of, well, I want to say educate, because it's not educate, it's more awareness. Like how do we create awareness that we create a more, I would say one negativity kind of it's social media is fucking everything up. It's hot. It's highlighting the worst of human behaviors. Like,
well, to answer your original
Wilson
question, to have these conversations, you have to appeal to people's elephants and not their riders. And you have to appeal to their emotional being. You have to. How do you do that? You listen to what they're saying and say, you know what? I know exactly what you mean by that, and I know exactly why you're thinking that. And you know what? You could be right. Now you're going to be like, oh, well, what do you have to say? And I'm not doing that to patronize you. I'm doing that because I really care about how you feel, right? So the more intrinsic the more intrinsic value, the more valuation you have of other people. It's called feeling into people.
Yep.
It's empathy.
Yep.
The more empathy you have, the better the conversation is going to go, and the more the sharing of ideas will take place. The less empathy you have, and the more emotional distancing takes place between you and another person. This is why when you get on social media and they can't see you, they don't know who you are really, where you're coming from, and you do a tweet, it's the greatest emotional distance between you and whoever's going to read it. You don't even know who they are that's going to read it. So now you can say the most bizarre, ridiculous things. But if we're sitting together having coffee, you know and I know there's going to be certain things we ain't going to say.
Yeah.
Right?
Are you familiar with Chris Voss, the FBI negotiator? He wrote the book Never Split the Difference.
Oh, I've heard of the book. Yeah.
Oh, you got to fucking read it. But he has a chapter in the book called That's Right. And he's like, one of the best ways of negotiating with anybody is getting them to say that's right, understanding their viewpoint on an empathetic level of like, I get it, man, I get it. And for them to say that's right, you understand.
Yes. And the friends that I have that have differences in opinion than I have, that's the relationship. We respect what they think. Now, none of these people are sociopaths or functional sociopaths or non-empathetic people. I do not make friends with those people. The people I make friends with tend to be somewhat like me, or at least better than me. So I level up in my friendships. I'll help anybody, but I'll hang around only certain people. I only hang around people I want to be like. And so in that way of doing things, you grow and you become more informed, more enlightened, and things of that sort. So if we're going to make a difference in the world, it's only going to happen in our one-on-ones.
Yeah.